Hi, this is Barbara Sanders, and this is Soul Speak of Sacred Metamorphosis on YouTube. And it is August 16th, Sunday, and this is life. I want to call this piece Eternal Magic. But as I heard those words this morning, and that's my process, I'll hear some words and then I'll start dreaming and imagining eternal magic, for instance. And as that happened this morning, I was so excited. I thought, I want to talk about eternal magic. And just still lay there quietly and let things come to me. And so all this stuff came to me. And then I took a shower, got dressed, all sorts of things went on, and then opened my computer. And my computer had installed some program last night. So it took forever to uh, re-engineer itself and get myself ready. And then I was in the light of a window and it was beaming in so you couldn't even see me, and then I changed position. Anyway, this is life. So we have these great ideas, these creative ideas, and we want to talk about something or to engage with other people or to go to work or whatever we want to do. And technology and all sorts of things get in the middle of or antecede the real quest that we're having, which is I wanted to talk about eternal magic. So I just am laughing about that because it's like, isn't that how things happen? Yes. So Barbara Sanders again, this is Soul Speak, and I wanted to talk about eternal magic. I'm not sure now I have much to say about it, but I wanted to just breathe with you and let that come into us. I also did a piece on eternal emptiness recently, and I realized I talked a lot about emptiness and not about eternal. So I am going to do some wordsmithing and wordplay as we do this, but let me see what comes in first as we breathe together, not for long, but just let me settle down after all this technology stuff and see what's coming in about eternal magic. Well, I'll say the first thing that came in, and that's something that I did think about, and I'm going to read you some lyrics. Let's see if I can find this. Okay, this is Prince, whom I loved, and I was going to talk about also, so let me just say this tangent first. There are many religions, many cultures all over the world, have been for thousands and thousands of years. And I grew up in the United States in the Deep South, and so I grew up in a Christianity situation, Episcopal church, low church, and learned in college and since then about all sorts of Eastern and Western religions. The ones that appeal to me the most, just to say, are pantheism. You can look that up. I'm not going to define that one. Pantheism and Taoism, but Taoism is especially my heart about the way. And I started doing the I Ching process, and you can find that on an app or in a book, I Ching, ICHING, about 35 years ago. And I love the theology of the I Ching. And since then, I've followed many teachers, mentors, and prophets. And that's why in prefacing Prince's song is that I think he is a prophet too. There are many prophets, Mary Oliver, all sorts of prophets. So when I think about eternal magic, I think about this song for some reason. I'm going to read the lyrics. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. Electric word life. It means forever, and that's a mighty long time. But I'm here to tell you there's something else, the afterworld, a world of never-ending happiness. You can always see the sun day or night. So when you call up that shrink in Beverly Hills, you know the one, Dr. Everything will be all right. Instead of asking him how much of your time is left, ask him how much of your mind, babe. Because in this life, things are much harder than in the afterworld. In this life, you're on your own. And if the elevator tries to bring you down, go crazy, punch a higher floor. It's so funny. I'm just reading this. I just got to the highest floor ever lived on, and I'm in the sky now on number 22. He goes on, if you don't like the world you're living in, take a look around. At least you got friends. You see, I called my old lady for a friendly word. She picked up the phone, dropped it on the floor. Ah, ah is all I heard. Are we going to let the elevator bring us down? Oh no, let's go. Let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. Let's look for the purple banana until they put us in the truck. Let's go. We're all excited, but we don't know why. Maybe it's because we're all going to die. And when we do, what's it all for? You better live now for the grim reaper come knocking at your door. Tell me, are we going to let the elevator bring us down? Oh no, let's go crazy. Let's get nuts. Look for the purple banana until they put us in the truck. Let's go. And I say all that because I love that song. And I also think it pertains to eternal magic. One brief aside story, and then I'll do some definitions. I was in a family constellation, not family, galactic constellation, I will call it, this week in our Eros Unbound class with Emily Trinkus and Tammy Roth. And it was my turn to be in what they call the love seat. There's no longer a hot seat, there's a love seat. And so I got to be in the love seat, and Emily told me a lot about my astrology at the current time in my natal chart, which I know a lot about. And then Tammy led us in a constellation where people are chosen by me to represent parts of me. Someone is chosen to represent myself. Tammy often uses, and I love this, blind energy. So I select a person in the class who's going to be blind energy 1, 2, 3, 4, however far we go. And then later, after we represent and get into the field, and this is the quantum field where we all live all of the time, but we can access it and become more conscious of it as we do this process. I named someone to represent me. I named someone to represent Energy 1, which we later found out was conditioned early fear. And before I go on, I'll say that my intentions for this constellation were a couple that I've had since 2018. One was releasing fear or reducing fear, or I could even say getting to know fear better or understand, no, not understand it, but know how my fear fuels me and perhaps reduce some of it. And the other was becoming more trusting of the divine, or whatever you call the divine. It might be nature, Mother Earth, the gods and goddesses of all these religions. There's so many of them, the prophets. It can be any word or label or feeling or force, or energy being or love source intelligence, as David Clements talks about. When I talk about the divine, there's so many names for it, for everybody. So use yours. So I sometimes call it the divine or the great mysteries. So what was I saying? Oh, my intentions for the constellation were to release fear and to trust more in the divine, so that I'm not always feeling the need to manage or to be in control or to coordinate everything in life, because that doesn't work, number one. And second of all, that comes from a very human stance, not wrong or bad, but a human stance of needing to survive as little bitty babies and children and growing up to find ways to help us. What it turns out in this constellation is it helps us learn to put on masks to help protect us, to manage our feelings, whether they're feelings of fear, anxiety, sadness, depression, anger. We learn and are conditioned throughout life and trained throughout life, informally, indirectly, and directly, to become societally appropriate, to live in this patriarchy in which we still live, and to get by and to survive well and to perhaps even thrive. But some of us have learned as we've gotten older and or wiser, hopefully, that And getting older doesn't always do that for us. We have to really dig down and go into deep, dark places sometimes to explore ourselves and to find so many parts of ourselves that either are holding something for us or protecting us or acting out for us. So all of this to say that was what was going on in the constellation. And the reason I bring up this constellation is because it was quite interesting that because of my intention, the first blind energy was later, we were told, was early conditioned fear or conditioned early fear. And what we realized throughout the constellation, or what our facilitator helped us realize, is that we don't need to get rid of that or release it necessarily, but we can transform it or transmute it into something else. And my transformation in this constellation was being in the field with the representatives and noticing and finally deeply knowing that my early conditioned fear was transforming into magic, and or my magic was being covered up by the layers and layers of masks that I've worn all of my life, which were pretty healthy acting masks. They worked pretty well. I functioned pretty well, but they were masks. And as I've gotten older and continue to do healing practices, energy healing practices, quantum practices, all sorts of practices that help us become more authentic and genuine in who we are, what I've noticed is that I operated with these masks on, which we all do. It's not wrong or bad, it's just what we all do. And as I peel back the layers of the masks, I can see myself more clearly. I can know myself and the divine more clearly, because what those masks and barriers of protection also do, or coping skills or defenses, if you want to call them that, is that they also keep us so well protected. As David Clement said, there's a fortress around our hearts. And our hearts are very important to us, so we protect them unconsciously, involuntarily, as we grow up in this world. And part of the mission that I and some people have is to let some of those layers of the strong, rigid, bricked over fortress or stoned over fortress, let some of them dissolve so that we can become more vulnerable and intimate with the world, with ourselves, and with other people, with nature, with animals, all living beings, and even with the cosmos and the divine. Again, whether you call that up in the sky or down below in Mother Earth, whatever you find speaks to you in a sort of eternal way. And when we're covered up with all our masks and coping skills, we sometimes don't hear well or listen, because one of my masks, excuse me, my nose itches. One of my masks was being busy a lot, and I worked hard most of my life, all of my life, and I was busy when I wasn't working. And that helped me manage my feelings, which whatever they were. And I wasn't even really sure about my feelings, even though I went to school to learn to be a psychotherapist for a few years, and then learned throughout time with continuing education all about feelings and all about being a psychotherapist, and continued learning. And I still learn more these days about magic and the quantum field and healing practices than about psychotherapy. But with all that learning, I remember midlife thinking, I really don't know how I feel. Though on the Enneagram, I tested out online several times and with a professional to be a 2. And a 2 in the Enneagram is to be a helper. And I didn't like that term. I know some 2s, some actual Enneagram 2s, and I tried to be something different. So became a 4 at one point, or a 3. Every time I would test, I'd try to do it a little bit differently to be my real self. But only in the last year, at my age, when I took the Enneagram after a bunch of wonderful transformation and healing, and I was as honest as I could possibly be, I realized that I am an Enneagram 8. And that is not the easiest Enneagram to be. And I have a really good friend who's an 8 and another acquaintance colleague who's an 8. And there are all sorts of people who are 8s. And I remember thinking, oh God, life is hard for them. Oh God, they're hard to deal with. Or, oh God. And it turns out when I read the results of this more honest, authentic test that I took, it was like, that explains so much. And by the way, I will also say as an aside, I am not wedded to any one theory like the Enneagram or the Kama Sutra or Buddhism or Hinduism, or I do like Taoism, as I said, and pantheism, but I'm not wedded or married to any one theory. I'm very open and accepting of lots of different theories and theologies and philosophies, and that's just who I am by nature, by my natal chart and all sorts of things. So I was excited when I got this score, and I was like, oh my God, that's the one I would not want to be. It helped explain my life, though. So, with this cheerful demeanor, this sparky kind of energy that I have, all of my life, I've been enthusiastic, cute. I've been a go-getter. I've been an activist. I've been this and that. And it took me a long time to find intimacy, that's for sure. I didn't get married till I was 38, had a baby at 39. Couldn't have done all that earlier because I was so wound up in my own anxiety and distress or stress, busyness, and all sorts of things. I couldn't even know how I felt well enough to become a partner, a good partner, a healthy partner, and find someone who might be a healthy partner for me. So I'll stop all that history for a minute and just say that when I found out I was an Enneagram 8, they are called the Challenger and they're called many other things, but it helped me make sense of my life in a way that I'd never made sense of it before. And that's the sort of restless energy that has always been present. Um, strong feelings of unfairness is just unfair, wanting to advocate for others and the world and living beings and not accept the kind of justice systems that we have in this country or elsewhere that I've seen, not be accepting of lots of traditions and conditionings. And I've liked the word revolution a lot. In fact, I like the word sacred evolution a lot. And or revolution, revolution could be made into revolution or evolution, sacred revolution. So there's all that energy that's been inside me. But as I put on my mask to learn and to be a great psychotherapist and person, I thought I was living as a helper, with everyone, taking care of everyone, pleasing everyone, trying to be the best I could be for everyone, except not as consciously for myself. And I'll say it that way because, yes, I was always helping myself too. It helped me to have people need me and want to work with me so that they could get better, feel better. And then I got a charge out of that and I felt needed, and need to me for a long time felt like love. So if I could help please someone or help meet their needs, that felt like love to me. And I didn't really understand love much before that. So in some ways, I don't like the word pathology, but in some ways, our issues and our ways of being hopefully can translate into a career that helps us make enough money to live on or that we enjoy. And I enjoyed being a psychotherapist all these years, but only in the last several years, and especially since I mostly retired at 70, have I been able to have the space and time and energy to relax a lot of those masks, to relax a lot of those fortresses that I built up, and felt the need to continue being as, because that's who I've been all my life. I know several people who've known me for over 30 years, but my family moved around a lot when I was a kid. So I don't have as much of the long-term relationships that some people have since babies and since kindergarten and high school and college. I learned really well from my family's moving around a lot when I was a kid to go into a situation and be charming and be nice and actually entertaining and be humorous and witty. And uh, I got a lot of attention that way. And that helped me survive. It really did. It helped me thrive at some points because people liked me and I needed to be liked. We all want to belong, right? We all want to belong or we die. I talked about that recently. Uh, I want to say one more thing about the last few years. I've gotten myself into living situations where my living situation increased my old self, my former self, with all the masks. So I went to live at co-housing in Germantown in Nashville, Tennessee for a while in the teens, 2000 teens, 15 through 18. Stayed there a few years and it was really hard for me because not only did our window face the courtyard and I watched people pass by all day and we had all these meetings, process meetings and decision-making meetings, I was with people a lot. And although I presented myself as an extrovert most of my life, and my husband and my loved ones will even say, yes, you're an extrovert, only in the last few years have I realized how introverted I am. And it may have happened more because of age or more because I left the co-housing situation, went to live in a home again, a single family living home, and found more peace and rest there than ever before as I was getting older. Then I retired. We bought a home in Florida to go spend the winters in and some other parts of the year. And being away from my community helped me so much. Learned to be alone for the first time in my life ever. I loved being alone. I always said I needed more time to be alone, but I didn't really know how that felt because I was always so busy with work or career or family or friends. So Florida, that house, being on this bay with the large birds, the heron and the osprey and the pelicans, all of that helped me slow myself down. And I will include my body, my mind, my spirit, everything slowed down. And it was wonderful for me. We did that for about 3 years. We moved into another sort of communal situation in an independent living place here in Nashville for older people. And I thought that was the best thing in the world because it was a high rise and we wanted to live up in the air and see all the beauty around us in the skies, which we've never seen. While living in a neighborhood on the ground, we see beautiful trees and flowers and bushes and birds. We hear the birds and all these animals. But having moved to the sky, which I did in late 2025, actually, there's a whole new world up here too. However, this was, as I say, more of a communal situation where dining rooms and community were very important. And I continued myself being busy and getting to know new people and becoming part of community and realizing I was still pretty jacked up as I have been in the past. And so my husband and I chose to come to another high rise to live in the sky, higher up on the 22nd floor, with the most gorgeous green tree scenery and clouds, sun, moon, and stars that I've ever seen regularly, which have helped me become more peaceful, more loving to myself, more loving toward others, and have more time alone and not feel the constant urge internally. Nobody did this to me. I felt the urge internally when there are lots of people around to go engage with people. And I'm thinking about this and laughing because I wanted to talk about eternal magic. And I wanted to talk about the words. And I'm going to still talk about the words right now. And I can go back to what I was saying. And I wanted this not to be too long, but it may be a little long. So just a few more minutes. Let me say some words. So when I think about magic, I like this definition from the internet. The charms, spells, or rituals used in an attempt to produce supernatural effects of control, excuse me. Let's go back. The art or practice of using charms, spells, or rituals to attempt to produce supernatural effects or control events in nature. That is quite funny because here I was again reading a definition about magic, which is about control, even if it's with the supernatural. It's about creating ways of transformation and transmutation. One other definition, let me go to. Eternal, which I didn't talk about with eternal emptiness. being without beginning or end, continuing without interruption, perpetual, continual, seemingly endless, interminable. And I liked the words that I heard this morning about eternal magic, like I did about eternal emptiness, because there's something about the ongoingness and the quality of everlastingness that helps me ground myself even better into Mother Earth here in this human body here than waltzing around the world, not having any particular religious belief system or connection or strong faith in any particular, again, one way type of religion or theology or philosophy. And there's something I needed, and maybe many human beings needed, that is more eternal. And I think of that in the way of thinking about a soul as eternal, divine as eternal. David Clements helps us talk a lot about our higher selves and using our higher selves or our spirit guides or whatever kinds of support you notice outside of yourself, not just in physical form, but all sorts of energies around us that help support us in a compassionate way, that help us become our more true selves, truer selves, and help us make changes and let go of things, of energies, of containing stuff that no longer belongs to us or never did belong to us. If you believe in reincarnation, we carry genes and DNA of fear from so many millennia ago, and we keep carrying a lot of our family patterns, rigid patterns and beliefs and feelings that we sort of inherited in our human bodies. So when I think of transformation, it helps me to think of my higher self as a sort of intermediary or set of intermediaries. There can be lots of our higher selves. And then the soul is more of the eternal, everlasting, some energy force out there that is eternal and maybe contains or infuses us with the magic that I like to think about. There's one more definition I want to go over and then I'll stop. And one, it's the definition of alchemy. I love that term and people use it in so many different ways, but I don't really understand it ever. But the one part of the definition I liked was a seemingly magical power or a seemingly magical power or process of transmuting. And so I thought we got to look up transmuting, right? And it's to change from one form, nature, substance, or state into another. So alchemy is about helping us transform either ourselves, parts of ourselves, energies around ourselves, perhaps. That's the controlling part of magic. So that's part of why I'm talking about eternal magic. And what I did is I went down into my history, into my human body, into my Enneagram, into my ways of being, and trying to explain to myself and to others how you can do a similar process and find why and what you cover up that's so precious to you, that's so scary to you, that's so in need of protection and safety. Many people have had in this lifetime far worse traumas and tragedies than I have. We all have had traumas and tragedies, and I don't think that pain is something that we can have much perspective on. And so, well, she had it worse than I did, or he had it worse than I did. Pain is pain. I do believe that. And we all experience pain at times in our lives, either physically, emotionally, or spiritually, and that we don't have to have the worst trauma in the world to feel that. Maybe it's the tip of the iceberg, and the person who had the worst trauma in the world felt the depth of the iceberg. And it's really hard to heal from a lot of trauma or chronic severe trauma or regular ongoing trauma. And I will say that I think even as babies and children in the best of families, myself included, is a really pretty good family. It had its issues. And I was born into a fear-based family, because I had, well, let me just say this too. So as I look at my family of origin, my father fought in two world wars, the Korean War and World War II, as a Marine pilot, not combat, but traveling, transporting the wounded and supplies back and forth. He never talked about the wars. And I asked him once when I was of age, why don't you talk about the wars you were in? He said, I don't want to think about it. So when I think about his statement about that, he must have been thoroughly traumatized, flying wounded people back and forth in this horrible set of wars. And I was the last born, so I was on the tail end of that. And I'll add one other family trauma to that, and that's that my sister, who was almost 3 years older than me, was born with a heart problem. And they didn't know about it at the time until she was 9 months old, I think. And then she started having testing and invasive processes and procedures, which helped her be a traumatized person herself, going through all that. And then at age 12, had open heart surgery where they cut her open under her breast so as not to cut her straight open like they used to. She was of age that they were just developing this under. Anyway, they break open your ribs, right? And it's open heart surgery, and it helped her. It was a leaky valve she had. They thought it was a heart murmur, but she wasn't supposed to live. And so for her first 12 years of life, my parents felt like, and were told by professionals, that she was probably not going to live. I was 3 years later growing up as a mascot sort of child, very energetic and happy and optimistic, and had my own traumas through all that with her, but she lived until she was 72 years old. And still, though, very traumatized in some ways because of that early life stuff. So I just want to say that about fear. Fear comes into us, it infuses into us in our bodily, regular human lives as babies, children, adults. And I'm just the kind of person that feels like it's really good to do all sorts of therapies about that and alternative practices about that and help our bodies learn to calm down with yoga and meditation and to help us become the best people we can be for ourselves, and then we can be for others. So that's part of my gospel truth. I will say it's Sunday, it's gospel truth for me. And it feels like it's coming to an end, and that's fine. I hope you enjoyed Dearly Beloved, Let's Go Crazy from Prince. And I would go listen to that song as I might right now and go dance to it. Dancing is also a wonderful form of energetic release and infusion of energy as you let your body move in any ways it wants to. I'm going to end with that. And have a wonderful day. And I will be talking again on Soul Speak soon. Thank you for listening. Bye.